Hello there, it's great to be back. I am Phumlani M. Majosi. This is the Phumlani Majosi show where we give you a black conservative perspective on local and global socio-economic affairs. Gabriel McKean is back. Gabriel, great to see you. He's going to fire questions at me as usual as we try to make sense of the world. Gabriel, over to you, sir.
Hello, Phumlani. Thank you for having me on. And I'm very excited for the stories that we have coming out today because our Minister of Finance, Enoch Gondongwana, has proposed a new theory that governments can never run out of money because they're always able to tax people. So, Pumlani, can you explain to us what Enoch's Gondongwana's new theory is, and what are we talking about here?
Gabriel, I was thinking that he was going to say the government doesn't run out of money because it can print it. It can ask the central bank, one of its entities, to just print the money. That's what I would have expected from the politician. But for him to say we're not going to, the government doesn't run out of money because it can tax the people. That was quite unusual from a politician because we've seen what's happened in Venezuela. We've seen what's happened in Zimbabwe. How the government there basically went on a printing spree, to finance massive programs that it could not afford, but then asked the central bank to be the printer of money there. So these things, they're just from a politician. I thought I was going to expect that, but then he speaks about, well, we can just tax the citizens. Well, how much taxes do we want here, Gabriel? How many taxes do we want? Especially given the fact that we have a very much small number of people who pay taxes, who pay income taxes in this country. Look, you have 60 million people, and then how many people do you have that pay personal income tax? About 7 million people. So 60 million people in total in the country, and you have about 7 million people who pay income tax. That's a huge problem, right? The tax burden is very high in the country. Even when you compare it to other emerging markets, we have a very much high tax burden. In fact, even our tax rates, they are higher, they are up there. So I mean, you have to ask yourself how much more can you tax South Africans, especially if you are going to say something as so ignorant as saying the government cannot run out of money because it can take tax citizens. Well, you can tax them up to an extent. It can't be forever, especially in a country where we are seeing massive sort of fiscal challenges. We are seeing a country that is troubled in terms of government debt. Our government debt now is higher than the average, debt or government debt in the emerging markets. Our deficits, they are really up there. It's been concerning, and that is why the government has been going on suppressing spending, over the past year and a half or so. Because why? Because really we have serious fiscal challenges. So the idea that we can tax more now, given the already constrained, tax-paying people that are under pressure, with very few people who can who pay income taxes, that is just a total madness. And remember, again, you have about what 28 million people who live or receive social grants or government grant from government. So, and all these pressures, they are there, they are in place. So the idea that we cannot run out, the government cannot run out of money. It can just tax. You cannot tax forever. You can't. Because as you increase taxes, you are discouraging economic growth. You are constraining it, you are suppressing, you are stunting economic productivity. So I was quite disappointed, Gabriel, by Enoch Godongwana. He has been one of the people, in my observation, he has been quite sensible ever since he came in. As the finance minister. He has been quite sensible on taxes as well. I'm talking about, of course, in contrast to other ministers. He has been quite sensible, and I think he does understand economics largely. He does understand that there are things that cannot be fixed by government, right? There are things that cannot be fixed by um, by the government welfare. There are things that cannot be fixed by even monetary policy. So he has been, and with this statement, I was quite surprised to hear Godongwana saying that. I have no idea what prompted him to say something like that. Hopefully, he can change his mind and not make such, mad statements.
Well, speaking of statements that have people talking, the DA has caused quite a stir in the media because they have sent a letter to Secretary of State Antony Blinken asking for some outside assistance in monitoring the next election. So, why has this caused a media stir? And why does the DA feel it's necessary we have outside observers?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think this thing is being hyped. I think there is an overreaction from many people, whether it's in politics and in the media as well. There's nothing unusual, Gabriel, in having international or foreign people to come and observe the elections in a country. It's happened before. It happens in democratic nations around the world. So I'm not the essence of what the DA has done. There is really nothing. It shouldn't be hyped the way it has been hyped, the way it has been mishandled by many people. What I would criticize the DA though is that they, in the letter, they decided to mention, for example, they mentioned the MK party of Jacob Zuma, that it poses a risk in the country. I don't think that was wise from a political perspective to basically, you know, throw one of the election contestants, under a bus like that, or to put them in that letter. I don't think that was necessary. The DA should have written the letter. I don't have an issue with the letter, but then don't mention other competitors in the election. It's competitors, as that just looks weird, and very strange. What is interesting though is that how this thing has played out. When you look at how the ANC has reacted to that, Opet Bapela, who is the international relations coordinator in the ANC, guess what he said, Gabriel? He said, if the DA is calling its friends, we are also going to call our friends to come and observe. We're going to call Russia. I mean, shouldn't the NC Gabriel be saying, yes, bring those guys on? There's nothing dirty here. There's nothing wrong with doing this country. We run free and fair elections. Bring them. They must come and observe. That's what the NC should be saying. Instead of saying, we are also going to call our friends because the DA is writing to the US and G7 nations. We also have our friends. So, in other words, they see themselves, which says a lot about the ANC. They see themselves as more in friendship terms with Russia and other nations in the East, and not in friendship terms with the United States or G7 nations. So that was an interesting dynamic. That tells you how the ANC sees foreign policy, and how it aligns itself. So it aligns itself. So that is clear in how they have positioned themselves by that, by making the by that statement from Opet Babela. So I mean, this thing it has been hyped. I think there's an overreaction to it. Um, um, I must say, this thing happens often. There are always international election observers in democratic countries during the times of elections. So, but I think that where the DA did things wrong was to put, you know, the names of other political parties, or a political party, the name of the political party, one of the contestants in the letter. I think that was misguided. It wasn't thought through. The letter should have been just general, that you can come and observe here, um, and to ensure that we have a free and fair election. So it is not a train smash. It's something that is it's being exaggerated and hyped, and there's an overreaction to it.
So you could say that externally, the ANC has some dodgy allies. But our last topic that we want to cover today is internally some of the dodginess that happens inside of the ANC. Because it seems to have been decided by the party that the correct thing to do in response to an integrity commission is to ignore all of the findings that come out of it. So, what's happened here, Pumlani?
Gabriel, what's happened here is that we've seen factionalism, the usual factionalism in the ANC, factionalism and factions, and clashing with one another. That's what we are seeing. Because I mean the Integrity Commission of the ANC was disappointed and hurt and upset that their findings are being ignored, and the NEC, the National Executive Committee, is continuing to put the names forward that have been, red flagged. So it's that factionalism in the NEC, the different factions clashing, because in the NEC meetings, what the guys who have been red flagged, the case they made was that, listen, yes, there are some documents that have been mentioned that mention us, but those documents haven't been tested. Those are just allegations. Those allegations have never been tested, and therefore there is no ground to say we shouldn't be participants or we shouldn't be in the list, right? Um, and the question is, technically, are they wrong? Well, they're not wrong. These are recommendations, or you know um, um, allegations, and they haven't gone through the legal process or the law to be tested. But then it's a matter of public perception, especially if you run for an election. Do you want to have people who have been implicated in such documents, or you want to have people who don't appear in such things? Do you want to have people who are likely, or tomorrow they could find themselves in and out of courts having to defend themselves, right? Um, do you want to have people whom it's alleged, I mean, that they were somehow involved in the collapse of the country? So it's a public perception thing in that the ANC has to deal with. But it's not surprising that this these tensions between the different factions in the ANC, or different elements, are taking place. An institute or an organization that has become so corrupt, and so you know and so divided, it has to deal with such things, where you see these different sort of elements clashing. We've seen that many, many times in the ANC. In fact, even that Zuma is starting his own party, the MK party, and contesting elections. That, again, who was Zuma? Zuma was the ANC with his own following. He clashed with Ramaphosa's faction, and then look at where we are right now. Again, we are seeing the clash between the Integrity Commission and the NEC in the ANC, and it's not surprising. So the ANC is in serious trouble, and it highlights the fact that we have the party is a total mess, Gabriel. You can't save this party. It's got so much personal interests, so much corruption, so much disrespect for the country. It undermines the country. They can do anything they want, even put forward people who really their character is questionable, and they still make them members of parliament. It's the arrogance. Now, I must stress this, Gabriel, and that is parties in a democracy are going to do all kinds of things that we dislike, right? That we don't like. They will continue to pursue their interests. That's going to happen. The question is, do South African voters hold them to account at the ballot box? If the NC is proposing or is putting forward a list of questionable characters, do we as a voter say no? That's where the test is. These people can do many crazy things. The question is, do we hold them to account? Do we say, no, no, we are voting you out because we are not bringing the people who we need, who will be good for the country? That's where it lies. It lies with the voter. The NC will continue to do its craziness and other parties as well. The question is, will the voter hold them to account? That's just my point.
Well, on that note, I am out of questions for today. I'm very happy to be back, and thank you for having me on again, Pumlani.
Pleasure, Gabriel. Tomorrow we are going to have more questions. We don't have there's always something to talk about on this show. There are always things going on in the world. Remember, everyone, I am on my website, pumlanimachozi.com. I'm also on X, and my X handle is Pumlani at Pumlani M Machozi. I'm also on Facebook as well. My Facebook page at Phumlani M Machozi. I'm also on LinkedIn, Phumlani M Machozi. I'm also on Instagram as well. Can you believe it? Yes, I am. It's at Phumlani M Machozi. That is my handle there. We will chat next time.